Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Hufford. I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of an overview on how I use fiberglass enamels and products to actually either enhance or paint line work waterslide decals. Back in 2017-18, I designed and sold a lot of my designs, and unfortunately, those were discontinued due to cost increases that just made it a little bit prohibitive to continue selling. But I did a lot of decals where I used the fiberglass enamels to paint. So now my designs are available through Milkweed Arts, and I'm going to be concentrating today on the use of the Milkweed Arts full color decals or the line work decals that they have available. Here are just some examples of the little holiday things I've been working on. And so some of them are full color. This little holiday mouse, for example, is my original design. After that was pre-fired on the ornament shape that's available from Milkweed Arts. I used sky blue UGC enamel to create kind of the little table or area that the mouse is sitting on, and then used the new drawing fluid and a dip pen to write Happy Holiday on it, and then just refired it. So the firing schedule for the decals from Milkweed Arts, they have available on their website. And I basically, I use that as my guide. However, because I'm using painting products on them, I actually, in the third segment where it initially says 400, I believe, to 1275, I'm going to 1375 in that third segment. And that actually burns off all of the film and leaves just the pigment on the glass. And that allows me to actually paint on top of the decal, whether I'm painting on the surface for face up with a more of a watercolor wash of enamels, which I'm going to demonstrate, as well as painting opaque on the right over the decal, and then that gets flipped over. So the decal is actually sandwiched between the two layers of glass. So you can do it either way. So this little guy is an example of just a full color decal. So that's not anything about the demonstration for today. This decal is a brown outline of cookies. It's both a gingerbread man and a tree. So this is available just line work, and you're going to add the color to it. This one is painted on the surface with fiberglass enamels. You want to use white glass or lighter colored glass because your decals are transparent. However, if this one is painted on clear glass. I set the decal on clear glass, painted it in reverse, flipped it over, full fused it to my white glass so that it's in between the glass. This one is on the surface of the glass where I used thinned enamels and did a wash over the top. So you can do it either way. This one is done the same way that I did this guy, painted right over the decal, fired it. I pre-fired it before I full fused it so that all the binders from the enamels burn off and it's nice and level on the back surface of the glass. That'll reduce any likelihood of bubbles or air bubbles being trapped. This one is done, the larger mouse is done with colors for color concentrates, and it's done on top. So the decal was put on white glass, like here, and then I used the color concentrates thinned down with water in a brush and kind of pooled it on top of the surface. If you're going to do this method with the color concentrates, if you're going to be taking your project to a full fuse, I would recommend that you go ahead and take your decal to a full fuse, then use the color concentrates on top. Because they need to be capped, you sift a little bit of clear powdered frit over the top. If you do it, if you wait to full fuse, and sift that clear powdered frit, you're going to get a little diffusion of the decal line. So if you want the line to be real crisp, you go ahead and set your decal using the recommended firing schedule, but go ahead and do your full fuse and then do your color work and fire to the lower temperature of 1375 with a little clear powdered frit sifted over the surface. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of demonstrate really quick here how to apply a decal. I know it's probably pretty well everybody knows how to work with Waterslide decals, but I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it anyway. When you cut these out, you want to make sure that you're cutting as close as you can. Don't go within some of the detail work and cut out negative spaces in the middle, because it's going to be really challenging to get the decal on the surface of the glass without it tearing or kind of maybe even creasing on you. So you want to just make sure you're as close as you possibly can be. I'm usually, between a 16th and 1/8 of an inch around when I'm cutting them out. So you can use an X-Acto blade and a cutting mat if you want to be a little bit more precise with it. I just use my scissors. And just cut around. Firing it to that 1375 range to begin with is what I use to set it. And that little bit of a halo of the decal actually kind of is not as visible. If you fire to a lower temperature, you're going to see the cut line around the decal. So you note here, I have a little dish of water I'm going to be soaking my decal in. And it can take, depending on, the temperature of your water, I usually start with warm water when I'm doing Waterslide decals. This has been sitting here a while, so it's a little bit cooler because the air's on. So it will take, 15 to 30 seconds. You just kind of put it in there. I always just kind of submerge it, push it down, and then just let it sit there for a minute. Don't let it sit too long or it's going to start to float on the surface of the water. My glass is clean, but I'm going to go ahead and just dampen my finger with water here. I like having a little bit of water on the surface of the glass because when I go to apply the decal, it allows me to play with it a little bit and position it really well before I actually start using the squeegee on it. So you can test it. You can pick it up and you can just gently give it a little nudge. If it's not sliding, go ahead and just put it back in the water. So I'll go ahead and do the gingerbread man and I'll do this mouse as well. So like I said, it doesn't take very long. That water's pretty cold. If it's a little bit warm, it actually releases just a little bit quicker. And he's sliding. Okay, so I just kind of shake it off a little bit, and then I position it on my glass and then use my thumb and push to get it to start to release. And I kind of lay it as flat as I can and pull gently. And that's leaving a little bit of water on the surface too that you can kind of manipulate, play with it a little bit. I want to make sure that my borders are even and everything. So I can just kind of nudge him around a little bit. And then I use a paper towel and just kind of blot the top gently. Don't be aggressive with your pressure or anything or you'll end up tearing the decal. And then I start from the center out and begin to push that water that's underneath to pull it out. Make sure you have no air bubbles trapped. I'm just using a very light pressure here. If you push too hard, you're going to tear it. And then I let that dry overnight before I pre-fire it for my painting. Okay, go ahead and get my mouse in here. Now I'm using UGC enamels. If you could use those, I use Colors for Earth on occasion. I would just recommend if you're using another brand, these are the brands I use. So if you're using another brand, you may need to do a couple tests to make sure that the processes are going to work for you. But these are the brands that I teach with and am successful with projects that I do and the education material that I provide. Not quite there yet. Couple 10 more seconds should do it. So if you're not familiar with Colors for Earth color concentrates, when I demonstrate that, these are actually ceramic underglazes manufactured for ceramics, but I use them in my glass a lot. You could also use UGC details with the same application that I'm going to be demonstrating here on the larger white mouse. Give a little nudge, that's done. I'm going to push slightly with my thumb. Hold it down and pull gently and slowly. And then I've got enough water on the glass again to reposition it and center it the way I want it on the glass. Just going to lightly blot with paper towel. And from the center out, I'm going to begin pulling to remove any air bubbles and the residual water that's underneath so the decal actually makes contact with the glass. And that looks good. Okay, so when I'm painting, like I said, I'm firing that 50 to 160 for 60 minutes, 350 to 800 for 1, 400 to 1375 for 15, as fast as possible to anneal. And when I'm setting, it's single layer glass, so I only anneal for 30 minutes. And then I go 200 to 400 and off on the kiln and allow it to cool to the room temperature before I open the kiln. All right, so here's some that I already have done. This is the cat. That is what I've done here. This is painted in on the back side, so the decal's on top. Okay, the painting was done on the back side, and then I pre-fired that. I've got a watercolor wash background glass that I'm actually going to be fusing that to for a little dish. Now, when you're painting in reverse like that, decal on top, enamels on the back side, the thickness of the glass, you're going to have a little gap, visual gap. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're within the line. Don't go outside the line. Try to keep it within when you're painting. But I basically just use a pick. I use a pick. Little wooden skewers, how I use for my painting for the most part. Now, I'm going to demonstrate the use of a brush here too. But just keep in mind, if you're painting the back side, you're going to have the thickness of the glass is going to have that visual distance between the enamel and the decal. So when you tilt it, you're going to see negative space there. But it is an option for painting. So let me start. I'm going to start with this little guy here, and just show you how I add enamel. For this application, I am going to use a brush. Get my decal water out of the way. Get my painting water bowl. Zoom in so you can see here the detail work. I think that should work. Hopefully that's not too blurry. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a that table or surface that he's sitting on. I already cleaned my glass, but I'm going to go ahead and wipe it again. Just make sure it's good and dry. So when I'm using enamels, I'm just doing little washes over the top. So what I actually do is I actually put the enamel on the glass, and then I dip my brush in water and then thin it out and just push it around. Give it a little bit of a fade there. So water dilutes the saturation and opacity of the enamel. And firing this again to 1375 or 1380, the enamel will gloss over and then it's ready to go. And that's just on a single layer glass. It doesn't dog bone, but it has a really nice polished edge to it. It's not sharp. And the beauty is, if you go over the decal like that, once it's dry, just use a Q-tip and clean it off. If it's thin enough, like I'm going to show you on the cookie, you're glazing right over the decal, but the line still shows through. So water, move it back and forth. What you want to do is make sure that when you're adding the water to the surface, it's not pulling back. If it's pulling back, you don't have enough product in it. So water beads up on glass. So I can also use a wipeout tool and remove anything that I've taken over the top of the color of the decal. And then I could use the pen work, add writing, whatever I want to do to it. So that's how I would just add to a colored decal already. There's a lot of personalization that you can do to colored decals. All right, so I'm going to do the tree on this one. I'm going to use, I think I'll use amber. In the same manner, I'm going to go ahead and I'm trying to do just the cookie part. All the little detail work I want to leave to put just enamels without thinning it down. Add water to my brush, and I'm just glazing over the top. Even the little, if you've diluted enough, you're not going to cover up the little speckled details for the texture of the cookie. So I'm trying to avoid the outline of the decal itself and just kind of puddle in the color thinly. Let me go ahead and get that one in camera view here so you can see what I'm doing. This is the one that I did in the way that I'm applying right now. So this, when I'm doing wash like this is when I'm using a brush. If I'm painting opaque, I'm going to use the wooden skewer. So you're basically glazing the enamels on thinly. They'll fire translucent to transparent depending on how much water you add. But if you do production work or you do shows and you need some better price points, decals like this can be the way to go. Because, if I were doing this, with other painting techniques, the time invested would be a lot more to do each one by hand. All right, so I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but you get the idea. It's just a thin glaze. I can still see the little brown specks of the texture of the cookie coming through. So that's what you want to pay attention to when you're painting on top of a decal. If you don't see that, you're applying the enamel too thick. A lot of your decal details are going to go away. Once this dries, it's going to chalk over and then you're not going to see them. So you have to pay close attention while it's wet. So I'm not going to use the brush here. I want to keep the finer details. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in just with my enamels to the mix to the painting consistency. So if I want to do white garland on there, you want to add a little bit of red. So you can personalize the decals any way that you want to. And it just makes it a lot faster to do several of something. Makes for great, quick little gifts too. So this guy, what I'm going to do here is I want to do the details first. I'm going to paint the top of the decal, and then I'm going to flip that over, and it's going to be full fused between the glass. So I want this to be opaque, not a wash. I could do a wash and do the same thing, but I want to just show you how I do the opaque. I do all my details first. You could use a toothpick if they're really fine. Sorry if I keep sliding out of camera view. My tripod is, I'm usually hovering right over, so I'm trying to keep my head out of the view of the camera here. So when you're painting in reverse and you don't want there to be gaps, you want to make sure that the enamel butts up next to the other enamel. So I'm not, in this case, I'm doing my details, I'm leaving the dark line, but when I paint the cookie color, I'm going to butt up that cookie color right next to the detail color that I'm laying down. So again, when I'm painting solid opaque coverage on the back, right over a decal, I usually fire that enamel side down on fire paper, which actually matures the binder burns off, number one. So I reduce the likelihood of air bubbles being trapped in the piece. Yeah, but you want to sift clear powdered frit on your bottom glass, just a really light layer. That also reduces the likelihood of any air being trapped. I didn't get my black stirred up for his eyes, but I could do the whole thing here. I'm just kind of giving you a brief overlay here. I'm going to do sugar cookie color here. I mix this brown up in the color theory class where we only used 3 primary colors for enamels. This is left over from that. And then here I'll go ahead and paint. It's puddle push and pull, industry standard in painting with enamels. I'm making sure that my cookie color touches the white. Enamels tend to, as they dry and the medium evaporates, the enamel can shrink back slightly. So I want to make sure that it makes contact with the other color so I don't have any gaps. So puddle push and pull, make sure it's nice and level and even. Use the your overhead light source. Look at the shine on the product. If it's not level, you'll see that. You'll see highs and lows. Enamels should be mixed to a consistency where they self-level without running out, pooling or puddling. Okay, I'm going to turn that over real quick so you can see. So that's how you would do painting right over the decal. Okay. All right, I think I'll demonstrate now. Let me demonstrate the color concentrates. So I think I'll use raw umber. So you want to make sure you're thinning these down with water in your artist palette. Shake it up real well. Let's see, get a little candy apple red. And we get the cheese color here. Said I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'm going to kind of show you at least how I get started here. sunflowers. Go a little bit of curry. You do have to shake them up in the bottle. Make sure they're nice and fluid. All right, so at this, I would use a brush for the application. Go ahead and get some cranberry too. Now pinks, some of the pinks and purples may not fire as brightly as you might anticipate. So sometimes I'll use a color, I'll add a color to it so that it shows up a little bit better. So in this case, it's going to be a really wet application. And you're going to glaze over the top. And when you're doing that, you have to play with it so that it's nice and level. But you do need to make sure that you're stirring it up frequently as you're painting. So I don't want to use it pure. These are transparent, translucent underglazes. Just trying to make sure I'm still in camera view here. And I just lay the brush down and scoot the color. Again, it does need to be capped, so you're going to sift a little clear powdered frit over the top of it. So if you do this after, if you don't full fuse first your decal and you sift clear powdered frit and fire it to that hotter temperature, the frit is going to displace a little bit of the line work. So you want to make sure that if you're going to use this technique, if your project is intended to be a full fuse the decal first, because this would only require a very low temperature, which wouldn't do a lot of moving when you sit that clear powdered frit on top. So if you see it start to crawl and pull away, you haven't, it's too thin, too much water added. But I'm just using that brush and kind of moving it around. If you see darker spots, it's going to fire stronger. If you see through it and see a little bit of the white glass, it's going to fire paler there. I never dilute what's in the well. I always work on top of the palette. If these dry up in your palette, you just add a drop of water and they'll reconstitute. I'm going right over the black whiskers. They're going to show through because this is translucent. So this is a fun technique, but you do have to be really observant. You know, make sure you're paying attention that it's not starting to pull and bead up on the surface of the glass. Again, if it is, then you don't have enough of the pigment, you have too much water. So I'm not going to do the whole mouse here. You'll find some of these colors are a little bit not quite as thick to begin with in the bottle. Just depends on the color. I know sunflowers tends to be a little bit thinner. As this dries, you may find, I know when I started doing this technique, you don't want to rush dry it, number one. Make sure it dries at your room temperature, but if it's too thin, when it dries, it can crackle on you. So you just want to be aware of that. That's a sure indication you didn't have enough pigment laying on the glass. So this is more like painting with watercolors, and you can go right over the line because they're transparent. So that's the cheese. If I want to make some shadows on the cheese, then while that's wet, I can go ahead and add a little more color, like where his fingers might cast a shadow. So you can take a decal, you can elevate it from what it is just use your creativity. So when I'm doing something as continuous as the body here, though, you don't want to stop. I would have done the whole body first. You work in one color at a time. I just skipped around here just to kind of show you the different areas and how I would approach it. But after that dries, if I had full fused this already, after that dries, I would sift just a light coat of powdered frit and only go to no hotter than 1380. With just like a 5-minute hold. That'll melt the frit, but not cause the decal itself to begin to move, that pigment move as that glass melts. So it doesn't have to be a heavy application of powdered frit. So hopefully you found some of this useful and helpful in knowing, how you can take just outline enamels, make them your own, and have fun with it. But there's a lot of different decals available at Milkweed Arts. Right? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.